Welcome back to Careers and Coffee Talk. I'm your host, or am I? This week, I decided to try something a little bit different and invite my first guest, Paul Huang, fan favorite, back to turn the tables and interview me. I realized I really haven't shared that much of my own story yet, so here we go. Let's get into it.
Hi, Laura.
Hey, Paul.
How are you doing?
I'm great. It's so good to have you back.
Thanks for having me again. And ahead of Veterans Day, I just want to say Happy Veterans Day for all that serve and just appreciate all the federal employees who are right now going through a tough time with the shutdown. So
Yes,
um,
absolutely
just
echo
want to
that.
acknowledge that to start. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm only slightly terrified right now, a little nervous to be turning the tables, but I have to say it was really nice to not do any prep because we didn't talk about any of the questions or anything before this. So I didn't have to do any prep at all, which is a
So
little
I
bit of
am
a change.
terrified, Laura, because I realized how hard your job was to do these podcasts. I had to do a lot of prep. I had to ask people some questions. I had to look at your background a little bit, and I had to think about how to make this a meaningful conversation. But you and I go so far back; it's just a conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah, let me set the context. So I was honored to be your first guest. Since then, you've had such a great list of guests. I feel like, boy, I got to kick something off, but the guests have been just better and better. And and then you wrote me maybe a week ago, 2 weeks ago, and said, "Hey, do you have some thoughts on who else I might want to interview?" And the first person that came to mind was Laura. How about yourself? And in today's crazy world of AI, you probably could do that. You could probably do a Laura interviewing Laura, but
Oh, that's a good idea.
but you, but then we thought, well, maybe I can ask the questions, and why not you? Because what I know about you is you've had an amazing, interesting career, starting from like local journalism into like DHS and Department of Homeland Security. And you and I met at Fema, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, and
That's
then you
right.
went off to CISA, cybersecurity. I never get the acronym right, Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency. And now you're doing podcasts.
Yeah.
On top of that, you're a mother,
Yes.
mother too, and just an overall amazing person. So who better to interview than you?
Well, thank you for that very kind introduction.
So this is careers and coffee talk. So do you have your coffee?
I sure do. Always. Right here.
What are you drinking?
So for me, I'm like one extreme or the other. I'm either oat milk latte or black coffee. So nothing really in between.
No, it's a little late in the afternoon.
I have a little bit of black coffee just to be authentic here. So
I love that. I love that you're all in on it, and you're probably going to be up until 2 in the morning.
exactly. You know what? That's the price you pay.
And I was your first guest, but it was not a thing. But a thing now for all your previous your guests since has been the cup. So is
Yes.
your cup special?
That's right. It is a special cup. If you pay attention, I always have the same cup every episode. That is on purpose. So this cup is from the original Starbucks at Pike Place Market in
Oh,
Seattle.
cool.
And I got it just over a year ago. My first work trip in my last role was to a conference outside of Seattle, and I had to visit the original Starbucks and bring home a cup, just a souvenir from Seattle.
That's pretty cool. The first Starbucks, huh?
That's right.
By the way, since I didn't get to show off cups,
Oh yeah.
I bought three, and
Okay.
I'm drinking tea. I'm not as all in as you are. Um, but the first is it's a U Rock cup.
Nice.
This is a acknowledgement to my our FEMA days. When I
Hmm.
was at FEMA, we started a peer recognition program, and it was a U Rock cup, and it was a much
Right.
bigger cup than this little cappuccino cup. But we would fill it with candy, and you would give it to another coworker
Oh,
and say,
cute.
you know, Laura, you rock. Thank you for doing this. And then your job after the next week would be to fill that cup with candy and move it
Pay
to
it
the next person,
forward. I love
right?
that.
And then the other one is the American Bison at the Department of Interior, where
Oh
I was for
yeah.
3 years and just really fell in love with the mission and the people there. So yeah, those are my cups.
I love that. Did you say there was a third or just the two?
The third is my Starbucks cup.
Oh, okay.
By the way, this is not a promotion for Starbucks in
It
any
is
way,
not.
but how was your Halloween?
It was fun.
What were the kids dressed up as?
Oh, my daughter is very into the K-pop Demon Hunters. She was
Yes.
Zoe. And my son, I'm going to quote him here. He's going to kill me. His dream was to be an inflatable. He told me that was his dream. Oh, and so he's very into soccer. He's a big fanatic. He loves Messi, but he's done that a couple times. So this year he was an inflatable soccer ball.
No way.
He was. It was not a convenient costume at all. He found that he was unable to carry his bag, so I had to help with that. But um, he got a kick out of it, if you will.
That's adorable. So that leads to my first question. Imagine
Okay.
your kid's ages, 9 or 6. Tell me about little itty bitty Lauren. But before you do that, I know you're getting into AI recently, so
Yeah.
I wanted to share something. I asked you for a selfie, and I
Okay.
and I I, I want to know what little bitty 6 or 9 year old Laura wanted to be when she grew up. But here's something I wanted to share with you, and for those that are listening in versus looking in, I am sharing a picture of a little Laura in a podcast booth. And I generated this in today's AI world by taking a picture that you sent to me and saying, make this person a first grader sitting in a podcast booth. How closely, Laura, does this depiction look of you as a maybe like a 10-year-old?
I could see that. I could see it. I have actually naturally, you wouldn't know it because you've never seen it and you never will. My hair is naturally very curly.
Yeah,
I straighten it. So other than the curly hair, or like, not having curly hair, maybe there's a little
that
curl in it.
I,
Yeah, it's not too far off.
isn't it incredible nowadays what is possible with
Wild,
technology? Right,
truly
right.
wild.
And we could talk a little bit about that when you tell me a little bit, yeah, about your cyber
Yeah.
background and your interest in AI. But take me back to that person.
Yeah, oh
What
my
did she
gosh.
want to do when she grew up?
Everything, Paul. Like I used to, if you asked me then, I would have told you I would be a dancer, a singer, a teacher, a nurse, um, probably like a construction worker or something at some point. Like I wanted to be everything. I did dance growing up. I did ballet, into my teenagedom. I was never that great of a dancer, but I did love it.
Yeah.
And then yeah, singing, same. Like I like to sing. I think I'm pretty good in the car and in the shower, but probably not like professional. So none of those things came to fruition, but in college, my plan up until graduating, so I went back to school a little bit late in my mid-20s. And I had fully intended on teaching English as a second language before getting into public service. So for a long time, teaching was my plan.
Do you speak another language fluently?
So I majored in Spanish in college. So I had this plan when I was deciding to go back to school and finish like a bachelor's degree or something. I was either going to do radiography or I wanted to be fluent in another language, and I really wanted to learn Spanish. I'd taken it in school, but I really wanted to like be conversational. And so I thought whatever program I get into is what I'll do. I'm really glad I didn't do radiography because part of the prerequisites was shadowing in an ER or a hospital
Right.
setting. And I don't like seeing people in pain.
Oh,
So it's probably for the best I didn't do anything medical. I don't, but it is true about learning another language. One, it's really hard to do as an adult. And two, if you don't use it, you really do lose it. It comes
yeah.
back to me.
It's like riding a bike.
Exactly. It comes back.
So tell me about your career journey. Then you said you started college late.
I did. Yeah, I started working at a local newspaper, the Potomac News and Manassas Journal Messenger in Prince William County, Virginia, when I was in high school. And my mom went with me on the interview. I wasn't
No, wait.
driving.
So what is the job in high school for this paper?
Oh, it was one of the worst jobs ever. It was retention. I was a retention clerk. And so what that entailed was getting a list of customers who had canceled their subscription, and calling each one of them and saying, do you want to change your mind? Like, would you like to get your subscription back, or that $100 that's left on your account, would you like to donate that to the newspapers and education
Oh,
program? And it was awful because I was 16. and I would get yelled at all like, what? No, send me my money back. Or like, they would tell me things like they didn't like the content. They thought it was too conservative or too liberal, and I'm 16 and I don't know what any of that means. And so I'm like, okay, great, thank you.
That's a
Um,
big learning though, because you learn a lot
yeah.
of rejection and customer service. Is that right?
Exactly. Yeah, like how to just kind of smile your way through it and fake it till you may had this script and it was awful. I would try
Did you have
to read
numbers
it.
to hit? Like you got to retain X percentage or anything?
Gosh, I don't remember. I think it was like numbers of customers or at least reaching them or getting
Yeah.
like certain numbers of donations because that was also it was okay if they wanted to donate what was left to the program, which put like newspapers in schools for like school projects and
Yeah.
learning activities and things like that. So it was like, whatever you can get them to do, but a lot of times they'd hang up on me or I'd get
So
answering machines back in those days.
let's rewind a little bit. Your mom went to the interview with you?
She did. I wasn't driving at the time. So remember, I thought she was just going to drop me off. And then lo and behold, she comes in and is like asking more questions than I am about like the hours and what the job is. And I'm like, Mom,
A little embarrassing.
they hired me anyway. So it worked out okay.
A sidebar, since this is careers and talk to talk.
Yeah.
Since that interview, you've done several interviews. Any interviewing advice?
Oh, um,
Don't bring your mom. Well,
no,
it worked. You got the
do
job.
don't bring your mom. It's probably not a good look to bring your mom. I think my biggest piece of advice, well, I'm going to give two things. One is be yourself. Don't try to be somebody that you're not, because I think that comes across. And, you know, at the end of the day, like if they hire you, they're going to find out who you are. So you want to be yourself and be authentic. But the other thing too is more preparation. I think coming with smart, thoughtful questions that show that you understand, whether it's the mission, like what the job is, what you'd bring to the table, like thoughtful questions that show you've put some effort into understanding like what the job is and what the company does or what the organization does. I think that is a good look. Don't bring your
How do
mom.
yes, don't bring your mom.
Don't bring your
How do
mom.
you think you gauge the culture or the environment, the work environment? It's one thing to ask things like, and I like your advice of ask a thoughtful question like, what is your current challenge or what's a risk,
Mhm.
and do your homework. But how do you get a sense it's a fit? It's a fit for the company, it's a fit for you. How do you get a sense of the work environment
Yeah, that's
and
a
what's
great
important to you
question.
there?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think one thing for me is like, and a lot of times as I'm like kind of in this process now, you kind of start with like a phone screen with a recruiter or something like that. And, that'll give you a little bit of a sense of like process and organization and structure and all of that. But I think one of the things that's more important is it a fit? Do you get along? Like when you meet with the hiring manager, do you click? And if you're going to meet some of the colleagues or people that you'll be working with or the teams that you'll be, working across, like does it feel right? And I think I don't know, I rely a lot on gut instinct. I
Yeah,
think like you kind of know
yeah,
sometimes. Oof, I don't know, like it sounds like a really interesting job, but I don't know that it felt really natural or, I think when you're interviewing like as a job seeker, you are interviewing different organizations and like situations just as much as they're interviewing you. Like you have to make sure that your job really impacts so much of your life and your happiness and
right.
we've talked a lot about that too. So I think it really has to be the right fit for you as the job seeker as well.
Yeah, I mean, just the few micro interactions. I mean, those you're trusting your gut, but your gut is years of experience in meeting
Mhm.
people, right?
Hmm.
Those folks that you're trying to retain for the
Hmm.
newspaper.
Yeah.
Do I like this person? Do I click with this person? And all that cumulative experience is shaping your judgment, right?
Yeah, totally.
So, so take me from there. Newspaper. You're doing like retention stuff at the newspaper. Then what?
Well, so I ended up moving up over time. It was a small newspaper, it was a local paper, so it wasn't not a lot of staff. I was in the circulation department actually, but I did a lot of work with news department and because it was small, there was one point where they were realizing they needed to come up with a new product. So like newspapers used to be like afternoon. I actually delivered this newspaper when I was 12 years old. I had a newspaper
Wow.
route and like went around to my neighborhood like delivering the paper in the afternoons after school. But, then people wanted their newspaper on their porch in the morning when they woke up with their coffee. And so that changed. And then it was like, well, people this area just south of the Pentagon and near DC, it's very transient, so a lot of people aren't really connected to their local community. And how can we change that? And, coming up with new products. And so they did this, it's like a community guide or something. And they said, well, this community, we have this, population of Spanish speakers, and let's do this guide in Spanish. But they didn't have any staff who could read and write in Spanish. And so they asked me to translate this whole guide,
Wow.
which I did. I was in community college at the time, and I ended up reaching out to my professor to say, can you proofread my work here, like translating this article or this ad? And I did like the whole thing, most of it. It's like a
I
college
love the bootstrapping nature of this organization that hired you despite the fact that your mom showed up. And then they were like, hey, we need any Spanish speaker.
I like I can probably do it. And we did it. And I'd work with I don't know if you remember like the American Idol days. We had a local person who was on American Idol and like made it pretty far
Yeah.
in the process. And so if you can picture like those boxes that are like outside of like, a strip mall or something, and you can open it, you put a coin in, and you get like a newspaper out of it. It's called a
Yeah.
newspaper rack. I would work at the ad department, and we would come up with like rack cards, which is like the advertisement that's like in front of the newspaper rack. You can kind of insert and like, hey, we've got a local person on American Idol, buy the paper and you can read about it. So I would do stuff like that and like I think because I ended up being there from the time I was 16 until I was almost 20. I was 24 when I left.
Wow.
And which is funny because in the first 2 weeks, I was like, I don't think I fit in here. I think I should quit. Like,
And you
asking
stayed
my mom,
for
like, how
eight
do I write a
years.
resignation letter? And my mom's like, you just started, give it a chance. And I was there for like a decade almost.
So what
Um,
changed? Why'd you leave?
I was in my early 20s, and in my mind back then, which I think a lot of young people think, is like, I don't, I've made it. Like I was an office manager at that point. And I was like, I have my career. Like I don't need to finish school. I had an associate's degree. But I was like, I don't really need to go any further because I've made it.
Uh,
I run the
you're the
office.
office manager.
Yeah. And I went to buy a condo, and this was like 2007, around 2007. I was going to buy a condo, actually in the county where I live now in Stafford, Virginia. And long story short, I decided not to because I was like, I could afford it, but if I got a better job, it'd be easier to afford it. And to get a
Yeah.
better job, I probably need an education. And so I didn't buy the condo. I decided to go back to school, finish my bachelor's degree. And yeah, I left the newspaper to go back to school.
That must have been hard.
It was really hard. But I look back now and I think, that newspaper over the next few years after that, the circulation declined. Just such a dying industry, print news, which is sad, to think of that history. But I think like I kind of knew that the writing was on the wall.
I did LinkedIn spy you, and I
Okay.
read that you wrote something called the slug file. What was it?
Slug
The slug
tails.
tails.
Yeah.
And for
So,
those that don't live in the area, explain what slugging is. And I
yeah.
want to hear the best slug tail.
Yes. So we'll fast forward then. I thought I was going to teach English as a second language. I had a friend who worked for the Department of Homeland Security, and she was like, send me your resume if something comes up. She did HR. She's like, I'll see if there's something that's like a good fit. And like it doesn't happen this way anymore, but I came in through this program that no longer exists. And I was able to direct hire. I didn't have to compete for it, which, typically is very hard to get into government. And it worked out. I was able to go to the Office of Legislative Affairs in the Department of Homeland Security and headquarters. And I really didn't know how lucky I was just to get my foot in the door at that time. But like working in DC, I've always lived outside of DC, but working in DC was like so unfamiliar. Like, should I take
Yeah.
a bus? Should I drive up to Springfield and take the metro? Like, how am I going to get to work every day? And I was introduced to this concept, which is very unique to the DC area, and it's called slugging. And it's basically organized hitchhiking if you're not from the area. So you sh
Organized checking.
it is. So you show up to a commuter lot and there's lines of people and cars, driver will pull up and say, I'm going to they just yell out like Pentagon or I'm going, to DC downtown, and whoever's going in the line, it goes in order. So first come, first serve. If you're going to the Pentagon, then you hop in the car, passenger seat and back seat. So usually two passengers. And then in doing so, the driver is able to access the high occupancy vehicle lanes, so like three or more, and they
Right.
can drive for free on the lanes. So there's no exchange of money. There's actually a lot of like rules that go along with it, like etiquette. I would say rules like etiquette. Should say thank you and like confirm your location. But like other than that, no talking. The driver chooses the radio station for better or worse. Like if you don't like listening to heavy metal or talk radio or worship music or whatever it is, like the driver decides and you put your headphones in or you like just live with it.
Hey, it's a free ride.
It's a free ride. And for the most part, it works really well. But I will say the whole system took a bit of a hit post-COVID. It's never really been
Yeah.
the same since then. But it's started in the 1970s, and I think that the rumor is that it got its name from bus drivers. Would pull up to a bus stop and there'd be people waiting. And then it would turn out they weren't waiting for the bus. They were waiting to see if anybody would pick them up to get on the HOV lanes.
Hmm.
And so slugs are also those like metal discs that look like coins.
Uh,
They were like not imposter coins, but imposter bus riders. Like, oh, that's not a real bus rider. That's a slug. That's the
I
rumor.
did not realize that.
Yeah.
I every time I thought it was like the slimy things that
Yeah.
those
We're
type of
just
slugs.
like slugging
That's
to
right.
DC.
So
No,
you
but
started writing
so I
about
would
this?
come to work and I would tell my office bestie these crazy stories like, oh, this driver did this weird thing, or I had one driver that listened to the same. So Elvis Presley sang country music early on in his career, and he listened to like an Elvis original like country song over and over and over the entire ride to the Pentagon, like on repeat. And I thought he was going insane. And I'd come in and I'd tell her these stories, and she'd be like, you need to write a book, or you need to write." And so I got this idea. I was like, I'm going to start like a blog. So I bought a web domain, and then I was like, I don't really know how to create a website. So at the same time, a former colleague of mine at the newspaper had started his own local media site and was like, well, you could write for me. And so I wrote a weekly column. I also did some like transportation news and stuff, but I would just write like my silly little slug experiences and I called it Slug Tales.
Does it still exist?
I think there are archived. I haven't done it since like 2013, but I think there are at least a few of the posts still, and they're under my maiden name, which is Laura Cirillo.
Oh, that's fantastic. So you've always been a creator.
Yeah, I guess in some
Yeah.
ways. Yeah,
So now you got this job, legislative affairs. DHS was pretty new. Like,
it was.
where
Yeah.
did you go from there?
Yeah, so I was told if I would do a year in an admin role, I could move onto a legislative team, which was honestly the best thing because doing admin work meant like I was answering the phones and I was getting these calls from congressional staff who had these questions and I didn't understand any of them, but I got a real sense of like the scope, like the depth and breadth of what the department did, what the work was, whether it was somebody calling about a question about, on behalf of a constituent, calling about like a visa question or like, an exit lane, under TSA or a grant through Fema. Like I just got to understand and I got to the point where I knew exactly, I know which team handles that call because I know which agency handles, that topic or that issue. So it was a great way to just kind of really learn and get a better understanding about the department. And like you said, it was still so new. So just a really great way to kind of dive
I love
in.
that. It's like active learning, right? I
Yeah,
mean, like you can
totally.
do your job or you can try to continually learn the environment and who does what and what
Oh
we
yeah.
do
Oh
and then you
yeah.
feel more committed to it, right?
Absolutely. And then one of the coolest things was at the time, Janet Napolitano was the secretary, and she would do a breakfast, I think a couple times a year, with committee staff on the Hill, or sorry, not staff, members. So like a Democrat breakfast and a Republican breakfast. And it was just very intimate, like round table setting where she would just say, like, what's on your mind? Tell me. And they'd have a conversation about it, all the different members together in one, one meeting. And I had to like set up all the logistics and invite the members and work with their staff. And then the day of, like, go to the room and welcome them. And I was ready to leave. And the deputy assistant secretary at the time was like, stay. And I was like, what?
That's so cool. Yeah.
What? Me? I'm
Yeah.
like some GS, 7. Like, are you kidding? I can't be here. And he's like, no, stay. And I did, and I got to hear it and like just be in the room and like in the room where it happened, and like hear all
Yeah.
these issues being discussed. And that's kind of a theme I think that's like stuck with me is like just having a leader that allows you into the room. It's something I heard a lot from senior executives that I worked with, that we worked with. Probably you at some point, we probably talked about this, but one of the things that's really helps people to grow and things that, something I hear come up all the time is like just having somebody that believed in me, that gave me an opportunity to do something more than like my job,
Yeah.
really makes a difference.
That's amazing. And you pay it forward too, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So then you go, next time I'm in the room, let's look at a junior staff or someone starting their career or trying to
Yeah.
pivot their career and let's bring them along. And
Yeah.
I think that's great because you also get a diverse viewpoint, right? The folks working in that room have been talking and thinking about those issues day and night, and
Hmm.
you're just this new neutral perspective. And I think that's actually really cool too.
Yeah.
So legislative affairs, I mean, was that kind of then your career path into FEMA?
It was. It was so funny because, again, I studied Spanish in college. I thought, well, when I go to a legislative team, I'll want to be on like probably the border immigration portfolio, which was ICE, CBP, and U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. And I was particularly interested in a couple of things. Um, one of the, I don't know if this is still part of the mission space at ICE, but they owned the Intellectual Property Rights Coordination Center where
Hmm,
they confiscate like counterfeit goods. And we got to visit that. We would go on a lot of field trips and like see a lot of the work, because we'd take congressional staff to go see that.
yeah.
And it was incredible, like just the things that they confiscated and, just amazing work that they were doing. I was interested in that. And
Like
then
fake
citizen.
copies of like Elvis Presley.
Oh God. I remember one of the things that really sticks out was actually toothpaste.
Oh gosh.
Counterfeit toothpaste. Why? I don't know.
Huh.
But it was made with antifreeze, which I can't just,
Oh,
but it was on display in the entrance, and the antifreeze, I guess, had like leaked through, and this thing of toothpaste was literally stuck to the shelf. Like you couldn't take it off
right,
without destroying the shelf. And it was like, can you imagine like the idea that they potentially saved someone or that they did save someone from using a product like that could imagine if it does that to a shelf, like what it would do to a person.
right.
Baby shoes that were decorated with like lead paint, like counterfeit Jordans or something,
Wow.
like God, that's so dangerous. And so like just the idea of taking things like that off the street interested me. And then also the mission at U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. If you've never been to a naturalization ceremony, and I got to go to a few, including one that was I don't know how you say it, like presided over by like the deputy or the Secretary of Homeland Security. Amazing. Like the pride and
Do you
um
cry every time?
oh my God. Like I'm such a softie, and it just was like, you know, I was born here. I didn't choose to be born here, right? But like the people who what they go through, the hardship and just the they're bigger patriots than I probably will ever be because they've done so much. They've gone through so much to become a citizen, and like here they are, like they've like they made it, and they
Yeah.
have their flags from their home country and American flags, and it's just
Uh, that's a
incredible,
beautiful thing.
moving experience. Yeah.
That's a, so you got to see all these cool things traveling
Amazing
around.
things. Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
What about FEMA? And then tell me
Oh,
about the pivot to CISA.
right. So I thought I wanted to be on a border and immigration team, and our secretary at the time was like, "No, FEMA. We need help on Team FEMA." And I was like, "I don't know a thing about FEMA." And I think most people really don't. Like, I think a lot of people think that FEMA is response and recovery, um, and it is that also. But I got to really know the resilience part of FEMA, or what came to be the resilience part of FEMA ultimately, just kind of that like before the disaster side that
Right.
I think less people know about. And I really came to like love that work of like just
It,
making people safer and more secure, more resilient, making communities safer. Like that just like it worked
so,
out.
Laura, do you practice what you preach?
I'm pretty open with my kids, especially, and just like, what do you do in this situation? Or like kind of talking about it. So I think the communication is there. Like, do we have go kits, or like, are we stuck? I mean, we check our smoke detectors. I'm married to a first responder, so, we do test those.
Yeah.
So
Well, I would encourage you.
we could
Every
all do a little better.
the simplest thing you could do is sit down with the family and say, okay, imagine something happens. Where's our meetup spot?
Hmm.
If our cell phones go down, which happens in large emergencies because everyone's trying to call everyone, how do we connect with each other?
Yeah.
And I learned that lesson the hard way. Big earthquake here in DC many years ago. Our kids
Yeah.
were younger than your kids are now,
Yep.
and going, who's picking up whom? How do I get home?
Yeah.
Is everyone safe?
Yeah.
And going, oh man, we need to every year talk about our plan, right?
Which
And
is a good
refresh it.
point too, just because like we never had an earthquake in DC before. So like things that you wouldn't expect to prepare for are like things that you probably need to like really think about more.
Have you seen the House of Dynamite?
I did.
You know our friends in that movie, right?
Yes. I was like, ah.
That thank you. Well, he was fantastic. Um, it makes you have that conversation.
Hmm.
Like, what do we do, right?
Yeah.
And can we do anything?
And
And so
like,
I
who would
I
I
do like that.
be? Who would I be in this story? Like, would I be the one that like
Yes,
gives up? And would I
yeah.
would I be strong enough to work through this?
Who
So
do you think you would be?
I
No,
like to think that I would be was her name Olivia, the like main character? Because she was like very stoic when she needed to be. Um, but
she
there
was still a mom,
she
and she was
yeah,
still a wife, but
yeah,
still had a job to do.
exactly. And I think sometimes the emotion hits you. Like I've been in those
Yeah.
situations too. Like I remember an old boss of ours saying like there's no crying at work. And you know what? Sometimes you do. Like sometimes things happen. Um in that
That's
situation,
okay.
I think it's warranted.
One, it shows you're genuine,
Yeah.
right? And to lead, you have to be genuine. So I do love that. I actually, if we could pivot a little bit,
Yeah.
related, but you've had some great guests on. So one
Yeah.
of those great guests was Ali King.
Yeah.
If folks haven't listened to some of the previous podcasts, I'd encourage you to go back. There have been a series of them that have taught me that dual authentication is the thing I need to do for my cyber protection.
Yes.
Um, but Ali is a fantastic speaker, and I asked a couple of your previous guests to send me some questions. So
Oh boy.
here's from Ali, and she knows you well, so I think
Yes.
there's something behind this question. It says, "What advice would you give your younger self on how effectively to advocate for yourself in a toxic workplace?" And then, by the way, she says, "No generic answers."
Oh, funny. I don't think I shared this, but in my episode with Allie, we went to school together. Like not college, but like grade school. We went to at least
No
high
way.
school. Yeah,
You
together.
went to
Yeah.
grade school with a lot of
Yeah.
cool people.
I know. I know. And she's amazing. Okay, that's a great question. Um,
Advice to your younger self
yeah,
in a toxic workplace, what would you say?
unfortunately, I know a thing or two about that. But one thing I'll say is I think in the difficult situations, toxic situations, bad, I always say like I think I've learned more from my bad bosses and bad situations than I have from like the best ones. You learn a lot about who you'd want to be as a leader, what is important in how you treat other people, how you work with other people, and just how you want to carry yourself. And so I think being in difficult or toxic situations, one thing I would go back and tell myself is like, don't let it drag you down. Be stronger than that. And it's really hard when you're in the moment, but like, don't react to everything. Take a minute before you respond. Because a lot of times you will come out on top by uh, kind of putting the emotion aside
Taking a breath.
and yeah, taking a breath and being a little bit more thoughtful in your response. I think the other thing is try to see where the other person is coming from. And it doesn't justify bad behavior in any way. But I've tried to think like, well, what could I do differently? Because they respond one way, like I can only control my reaction, right?
Right.
And if I keep doing the same thing and it's not working, like it's like definition of insanity. And so, like, let's figure out another approach. I can think of one specific situation. It's not a work situation actually, where there was this person that I was like, just didn't gel with. I'm like, God, she's really like maybe a narcissist. Like I'm like diagnosing. And then as I got to know her better, she actually became really endearing to me because I understood more about her background and where she came from and why she was the way that she was. And I think you can apply that to work situations too. When you understand people better, you can have a little bit more empathy.
Yeah.
Even if they aren't like being super nice to you, you can be like, well, there's a reason they are that way, and I don't need to get dragged down with it. So I
Right.
think that's what I would go back and tell my younger self instead of getting emotional because like if you don't like me, it hurts my feelings, to be honest with you. But also sometimes tell yourself it's not about me. This isn't about me.
Yeah. So take a pause. Don't
Hmm.
react right away.
Don't be
And
emotional.
then
Don't let your
step back a
emotions get
little
the best
bit.
of you. Yeah.
Yeah. Step back a little bit. And your advice is to kind of try to see that perspective, whether you agree with it or not, whether it's
Yeah.
right or not. At least it teaches you something. But
Yeah.
is there a line where then you go, no, no, I can't, that's not excusable? And
Yeah.
what do you do about that?
I think when it becomes like abusive or it's like, hurting your mental health, one thing that has stuck with me that a leader, somebody we used to work with at Fema, said one time, and it wasn't to me directly, but it was like in I think like a town hall setting. And I loved this. And it was so simple, but he's like, if I'm here, he was telling us, like, I'm here because I want to be here.
Hmm.
Because a lot of times, in government agencies, like your senior executives don't necessarily control where they are. Sometimes they get moved around based on like need or things like that, skill sets. And he's like, I'm here because I want to be here. If I didn't want to be, I'd leave because none of us have to be in a job that we don't want to be in. And like
Right.
that's like a really basic, like simple fact. But like, have you ever been in a situation you just feel stuck? You don't have to
Yeah.
be. Like you can leave, you can find something else. And maybe you need to wait until you have another job before you leave a job. I highly recommend that. But you don't have to be anywhere you don't want to be. And
Yeah.
when a situation is like abusive or like there's harassment or things like that, like speak up. I think accountability is really important if it needs to be reported or, if it's something like that, because chances are if somebody's treating you in a way that's not okay, they're probably doing it to other people. And so I'm like, and I've been in that position. So
Advocate and
yeah,
advocate for your peers and those that come behind you, um, and you control one thing,
yeah,
which is how you act, how you want to react to it, and you could either push against it or you have the choice to leave, right,
yeah,
and choose other things. That's fantastic. Recently, you've been going through a career pivot too,
I
and
have.
getting into this podcasting world.
Yes.
I got another question from a previous guest, Lauren Zabrik. She
Okay.
also was fantastic.
Love her.
Also a fellow Swiftie.
Yes.
I have to be honest. I joined your club. Um, so
Well,
what I learned from her was like secure by design. That was really neat. So
yeah.
for folks that want to learn a little bit about how you can build cybersecurity into everyday things,
Hmm.
I think that was really fascinating.
Yeah.
But I asked her to ask some questions too, and so she has one, and it's
Okay.
about your podcast.
Okay.
Walk us through the steps from taking this from an ideation
Yeah.
to actually launching this podcast.
Yeah.
And what are some of the things you told yourself along the way, even when you doubted yourself? And what was the hardest thing? What was really difficult? And how did you overcome it?
Yeah. So the idea came from a couple of things. One, which is the reason you were my first guest. When we worked together at Fema, we would do what we called
Yeah,
coffee and conversation, and it was the idea was like to take a small group of staff, internal staff, and have a leader. So every week it was like this leader is doing coffee and conversation, and if you totally voluntary, like people would sign up. And that leader would share in this like small group of like 15 or less people, their career journey, the work that they did, like kind of how they got to where they were and what they were doing like in that role, whatever role it was. And we started it and like I didn't realize how much it was going to catch on. I would moderate these things every week. And it got to the point where, like, if I skipped a week for whatever reason, like I'm off on Wednesday and we're doing it on Wednesdays, and so I'm just not going to do it this week, I'll do it next. I get messages like, are we not, what's happening? Like, are we not doing it this week? And it was like a small part of my job, but people loved it. I loved the networking of it, because it was a small setting and it was like a safe space to ask questions. People were more likely to engage and not just like
yeah,
sit and listen. And so like you'd leave and like have a relationship with maybe colleagues across, another part of the organization, or, have this, maybe you end up connecting with that leader and like they become a mentor for you or somebody that you work with later. I mean, I just like the possibilities were endless and like it was really cool. And so anyway, there was that. And then also recently I'd started listening to Amy Poehler's podcast, Good Hang, which I highly recommend. It's like a super lighthearted, fun listen, and she's hilarious, of course. But it's like very one-on-one like this, like two people just chatting and like you feel like you're a fly on the wall for their conversation. And I just thought like that's so
she's much
fun.
funnier though
Well, yeah, much funnier
than
than I
me.
am. And so I laugh a lot, but I'm not quite as funny as her. But it's such a good show. And I started listening and I thought, I think I was trying to sleep one night and I just got this idea of like, what if it was like coffee and conversation, but without all the extra people, and we just like talk and like drink coffee, which I love, and hear about, these ideas and insights and transformations and lessons learned and like all these things that people have to share, which I love hearing that. And I thought, well, maybe
Yeah.
it's just me. Maybe nobody else will
No,
want to hear
I love
it.
it too. Every Sunday night, I listen to it while I'm on the treadmill. So how do you then take this idea in the middle of the night to where it is now?
I think I called you the next day.
Wow.
And I
So you
was
didn't
like,
waste any time.
no, I was like, well, I had this idea. I can't get it out of my head. What do you think? And of course, you were supportive. And I would talk to my friends and say, like, but what if nobody listens? So I think to answer the second part of Lauren's question, the hardest part is putting yourself out there. Like anything, where you're like, broadcasting, and I don't mean it like in that sense of it, but like putting yourself out there, putting your voice out there. Also your literal voice. Like I hate listening and watching myself like and I have to do it a lot in like editing episodes and stuff. And so
It's the
that
worst.
that part's hard. That part's really hard. But it's fun and I get to talk to so many people and learn so many things and the whole idea, honestly, at the end of it was I'm going through transition, and so many people that I know are going through transition. There are a lot of people either through government reductions in force or, company layoffs or things like that. There are a lot of people right now who are just kind of like searching for purpose or
Yeah.
trying to figure out the next chapter of their career or like, who am I without insert organization name here.
Is that scary or is that an opportunity to you? Like, where's your mind at?
It's
with
both. It's
yeah,
terrifying. But one of the things that has always stuck with me, and I feel like I hear a lot of guests say this too, is like there is growth in that discomfort, insert whatever analogy, Phoenix from the ashes, like you're
yeah.
gonna
You're
I
gonna do fine.
remain, yeah, I remain very confident that and like cautiously optimistic that like there is something bigger, better, whatever, like there is something that will come next.
That's awesome. I love that for you, Laura. I mean, so here's a follow-on question from me. If
Yeah.
you could interview one person out there, and we have large networks, lots of folks are connected, especially those that listen to your podcast. So maybe we could get this person to join your show. Like, who's one person that you would love to interview in your
Okay,
podcast?
I'm gonna give you two.
Okay.
Because one is living and the other one
Yes.
is not. General Stanley McChrystal. I'm a big fan. Team of Teams.
Oh, yeah, yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he actually did a resilience town hall. I don't know if you were still there at that time, Paul, but he did a resilience town hall through his consulting at the McChrystal Group.
Yeah.
And we worked with him and his team to coordinate this session. There was like an internal, for resilience staff at Fema. And remember leading up to it thinking like, oh my gosh, this is so intimidating. Like do we call him general? Like, you know, big deal. And he could not have been nicer and more personable and like just so down to earth and kind. And he just recently had another book come out on character. And so I read that recently and it just makes you like it makes
What's
me even
what
more of a fan.
what's the big takeaway for
It's
on character?
less about like the work because he talks a lot about team of teams and like things like, that are more like workplace oriented. And he talks a lot about his military experience and his experience working for the administration and things like that. But this was more literally about how you develop character and
Hmm.
experiences that he's had. And I really enjoyed it. I will say, and I have reached out to him on LinkedIn. And I know that he's read it. One day he'll say yes.
We're gonna do it, Laura. We'll all ping him and say, hey, join the show. So who's this other person that is, I guess, either
Okay.
mythical or no longer with us?
No longer with us because she lived in the early 1900s, but Frances Perkins, who
Okay.
was the fourth labor secretary, first female cabinet secretary. I am reading the book by Stephanie Dray, Becoming Madam Secretary. I think you'd love it. It's so, I mean, talk about like a story of resilience and tenacity and I mean like in her personal life, her professional life, like to be a woman who was allowed even into these settings and respected at a time before women even had the right to vote. Like
It's
incredible.
amazing.
Yeah, she was the longest standing cabinet secretary, I think, ever in history. I think to this day, 12 years under two different administrations. First FDR and then Truman.
What would you ask her?
Oh, I think just like I do on the podcast, like everything from her early her start and the whole story, just how did she get through some of those hard times like. Oh, it's such a good book.
Yeah.
And fun fact, Stephanie Dray also co-wrote my other favorite book, which was co-written by Laura Kay, a colleague of ours, wife, who wrote My
Yeah.
Dear Hamilton. So they
Yeah.
co-wrote that book. It's fiction, historical fiction, but from the perspective of Eliza Hamilton.
That's
Um,
pretty cool.
that's a
We
book I could read over and over.
You always do this in your when you're on this side of it. We will put all those books
In the book club.
in your book club.
That's right.
Laura.
That's right.
By the way, you gave the wrong answer. The right answer is Taylor Swift.
Oh, I mean, yeah,
because anything she
obviously.
touches becomes gold.
Exactly. Yeah. If I want to get those subscribers up, then yeah. No, I would absolutely. Okay,
The
I should have
General
said
and
that
Taylor
one.
Swift both will be on.
Which I mean,
Um,
honestly, Paul, that speaks to like the variety of the guests. I will talk to anyone who has an interesting story. So,
I like that question that Ali asked. A little broader question. What would tell your younger self in terms of how to navigate your career?
one of the things that I think one of the things that's been kind of a constant, and I didn't realize this when I was younger, but looking back, I know people who are very strategic about their career. Like, I want to do, like, I have a friend who like turned down this job because he was like, well, it's only supervising four people. And if I want to be, you know, whatever, then I want to supervise more than four people. And I'm just like, for me, it's like every opportunity that I've had has come along very organically, and it's been the right thing at the right time. There was a time where I accepted like a firm job offer in government that I knew I did not feel good about. And I ended up changing my mind, which I
Hmm.
felt, I mean, I really struggled with it, but I had two things that came up at the same time, and both kind of came to me. And I had accepted the one that I knew in my gut wasn't right. And I felt terrible. And I think they ultimately found like a way better fit. But it was that like gut instinct that was like eating away at me, where I was like, I know this isn't for me. Always listen to your gut. If it
Hmm.
doesn't feel right, it's not. There's a reason. So listen to
Yeah.
that and
Trust
just
your instincts.
trust your instincts. Yeah.
Laura, what's next for you?
I wish I could tell you. I I'm probably in one of the most difficult career transitions of my own life, to be totally honest. I served for 15 years in the federal government, and I loved every every job that I had, even the ones that like, were really hard in the moment. I think if I don't know what the next role will be, but I know the through line for me has been it's always been something that helps people, that
Yeah.
helps communities, that in some way kind of advances the public good and, makes people and communities more resilient, what in one way, shape, or form. And so I don't know where or what it will be, but I hope I can be creative, and I hope that I can do something that like my heart can be excited about.
One final question for me.
Yeah.
Um, you've had some hard jobs. I
Yeah.
mean, you worked at Fema and we were on nonstop in CISA. And um, how do you balance the work life and being a mom?
Yeah. One thing that if there's one positive from COVID, which is hard to say, it was the realization that flexibilities help people. Like were those, telework or, remote work in some cases, flexible hours, those statistically benefit working parents, caregivers, people with disabilities, like the most. And there's kind of been a walking back of that in recent year or two. And I think truly it hurts working parents the most because those are the things that like, those are the things that take people out of the workforce. I
Right.
can't pick up my kids or I can't afford childcare or whatever. I'm not saying that for me, but for a lot of people, that's a deal breaker. And, now your career is kind of done or at a standstill, at least while you're raising children or taking care of somebody else. And those were probably the hardest times, like leaving and, waking my kid up or my kids, or at one point, just one, dropping him off at daycare and like not really seeing
Super
him.
early. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Rushing to pick him up before daycare closes, sometimes not making it because you're coming from DC and a lot of traffic and things are out of your control and not feeling like you're getting that time. I am making up for it now because, I am a lot more flexible right now and not working full time that I can go volunteer at book fair every day for a couple hours, or I can go have lunch with them, or I can pick them up a little bit earlier. And so that part has been really great. This is the first time I wasn't working for a
Yeah.
summer. It's never happened. So, but I think those flexibilities and even just an understanding, like as a leader, I'm kind of one of those, the work gets done. Like I
Don't
think the
count
idea of a
hours.
40-hour
Yeah.
work week is just so archaic, and I understand it, especially in certain settings like hours and shift work and things like that. But yeah, if the work is getting done, like you can leave 5 minutes early or whatever, like go be with your family. Like that's what's important, and missing out on that for anything, just I don't know, it's not worth it to a certain point.
Thanks for that advice. I agree. I mean, having flexibility is not necessarily just get the work done and trust your folks that they can do it.
Exactly.
And then I love that you're taking the time right now when you do have some downtime to just be extra mindful and
Yeah.
spend extra time with the kids. That's fantastic.
Yeah. It's not
Well,
fun when
thank
they're fighting, but overall it's pretty good.
well, Laura, this has been super fun. I am sorry that it probably is definitely I'm not as good as you are at this.
You've been
But
lovely, Paul.
I'm so glad people got to hear your story and your career and your advice. So thank you for that.
I hope it's even half as interesting as any of my guests so far.
Oh, it definitely is.
Thanks so
So
much for doing this, Paul. I knew it would be fun, and you made it a lot less scary than originally thought it would be.
thanks, Laura. You're the best.
You too. And that's a wrap on this episode of Careers in Coffee Talk. Big thanks to our guest today for pouring out so many great insights. And hey, thanks to you for hanging out with us. If this episode gave you a little jolt of inspiration or made your day a little bit more brewed and balanced, be sure to click that subscribe button so you don't miss what's coming up next. Got a minute? Drop me a 5-star review. It's basically the podcast equivalent of buying me a fancy oat milk latte. Quick disclaimer though, the views expressed in this episode are personal and do not reflect those of any organization. This conversation is not an endorsement of any company, product, or service. It's just real talk over virtual coffee, okay? So until next time, stay curious, stay caffeinated, and keep chasing the career that makes you feel the most alive. Catch you next time.